I asked him if he trusts the generals, and he just laughed at me. He goes, I don't need to trust them. What does trust have to do with this? And the implication to that is clear. If they play around on what they have committed to, we'll be back. And we will immediately put them in a position where they have to either concede or reenact Tiananmen Square. Those are the options. The other reason for optimism that I wanted to point out is just everything in Egypt is happening in such a wonderful air of repoliticization, of enthusiasm for politics and democracy that has been amazing. I mean, nobody gave a damn about elections before. I covered so many fake elections with no turnout. What was the point? You know, the only people, the reason the Brotherhood did so well in 2005 is because they're the only ones willing to get beat up in order to vote. You know, the non-Islamist activist forces would boycott. You know, they preferred protests and street action. The Brotherhood were willing to get beat up in order to vote. Now everybody, I think, is willing to get beat up in order to vote. And that cannot be a bad thing. One of the indicators that I cite for how much fun the new democratic Egypt can be is the symbols, the candidate symbols. You know, the country has a very high level of illiteracy. So attaching a candidate to a visual symbol is key. And in the past, you had all of 3, maybe 4 parties, 2 of them extreme fringe, running for any given seat. So you didn't need that many symbols. One guy had a camel, one guy has a crescent moon, a Ramadan lantern maybe. But this new, they damn near ran out of symbols in this last election. There were so many candidates. And so once you get through the normal ones, you had people, there was a guy that had a blender, there was a washing machine, you know, a guy who might be known to you, an activist and blogger who blogs under the name of Sand Monkey. He was a laptop. I saw cameras. I saw the Conservative Party, Hizb al-Muhafazin, where they had a tank, like an actual military tank. That was their symbol. So just I loved the symbols because it was indicative of the complexity and raucousness. And it's hard to back away from that. You know, that's another one of these points of no return. So I guess I want to get to the Q&A, so let's open it up, I suppose.
Thank you so much, Ashraf, for that wonderful recounting of that amazing, remarkable time a year ago. I think so many of us forget what happened during those 18
it's easy to forget. Yeah.
days, you know, in the midst of the nitty-gritty of trying to rebuild the country. And it's not been pretty, but I was also just in Egypt and was really amazed by how empowered everyone felt. You know, these new political voices are emerging. And most importantly, those of the Islamists who have been on the sideline for 80 years. And I think here in Washington, there is a sense, at least on the part of the administration, that this is an important process.
Yes.
That this has to happen, and the process of being held accountable and ruling is a good thing, and will bring people to the center.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take just the prerogative of of hosting to ask you a few quick questions before we open the floor.
Sure.
You alluded to the Constitution. If you could just let us know sort of where that stands. Parliament is supposed to appoint an assembly to draft the Constitution. How is that going? And also, just very quickly, there was news today in the New York Times that the Muslim Brotherhood, somebody in the Brotherhood has said that they would like, what they're calling on the army to cede power. That's the first time that the SCAF Brotherhood has said this. It is somewhat remarkable, considering that they're seen as having kind of taken sides with the army.
Right.
So I don't know if this is an official position. This is something that we should watch for. But if you could comment on the Constitution.
That's very significant. Yeah, the Constitution is going to be a mess. And this I lay at the feet of the SCAF and the Brotherhood. In that is the main, like I said, delaying a different timeline would not have brought significantly more secularists into the Parliament, but it would have given time for a proper and more thoughtful constitutional process. So we're now heading into a situation where the Constitution is supposed to be written within the next few months. With nobody in the executive branch, the generals holding executive branch, the Parliament with a lower house that is freshly elected, an upper house that nobody is quite sure what the upper house's job is anymore, except to maybe pick some people for this constitutional committee, and it's all just happening too fast. So where it is it's kind of been overshadowed by the NGO flap, by the violence in the deaths at the soccer stadium in Port Said. So I think it's almost happening under the radar, which is dangerous. And it's just indicative of how backwards this process has been, where we don't even know the checks and balances of what the executive branch and the legislative branch's powers are going to be over each other. We're going to have them negotiate this on the fly with a tight deadline. So it's a shame. It really is. That's why the timeline should have been different. Not to give the secularists more time to get their act together, to get a chance to thoughtfully put together a constitution. So my only sort of saving grace from that is constitutions can be amended, and you know.
So you expect to see a constitution produced before the election? I mean, obviously it has to be
A deeply flawed one, yeah.
By June.
Yeah. Now, as far as the Brotherhood actually pushing for an early departure of the SCAF, that if they keep that up, the Brotherhood. Remember when I said that the Brotherhood tends to be borderline cynical in their politics? The Brotherhood has a long history of talking out of both sides of their mouth. They're all over the place, you know, and so it might just be a trial balloon. It might just be, we'll see if they keep that up as a consistent stance, then that's significant. But we're also running out of time. I mean, if the SCAF has really said we're leaving in June, I mean we're halfway through February now. So does another month really change that? If anything, it just muddies the waters toward. I think it's more important. I understand the sentiment and the passion of the protesters that say, no, you guys have to go now. After everything you've done, you have to go right now. But if they, as long as they really leave in June, I'm happy to put just as much emphasis on holding them to that deadline of June. I can live with June.
But it's interesting that the Brotherhood would weigh in now on this issue.
Yes.
After
we'll have to see if it holds up. The Brotherhood is a moving target as far as their public statements, so we'll have to see if it holds up.
You could please state your name and affiliation.
Hugh Grindstaff, DHIS. I just came from listening to the Turkish foreign minister.
Yeah, I heard he was in town.
But when you think of Egypt's place in the Arab world now being replaced somewhat by Turkey and its stability, but you look at Egypt, when the revolution happened, I knew that the military would not let it get too far. But now what you see is jobs. Do any of the parties have jobs as their symbol? Because unless you employ people, there's going to be another revolution.
Sure. I mean, we're almost back to what was it? Was it Carville that gets credit for the Clinton slogan of "It's the economy, stupid"? Was that something like that? We're kind of there with Egypt. Yeah, it's the economy, and that's obviously the most crucial. I mean, the two short-term dangers that I'm most worried about are some sort of economic, irreversible economic disaster in Egypt, and the Christian element, the possibility of a Christian exodus from Egypt that would actually alter the demographics of the country in a way that's nearly impossible to reverse. So that and the economy are my two. If I had to say what I'm most scared of happening in the next year, it's not anything to do with the Constitution. It's not anything to do with, I don't think anyone's going to try to institute Sharia law, but I think that the Christian community in Egypt was already nervous before the revolution.